for that. So we had introduced. So we had introduced mitosis and what mitosis is. And so what we basically say is that there are going to be different, or rather two types of nuclear division. There is meiosis and mitosis. So mitosis, this is the one that is important, or the one that comes in handy for things such as growth, for things such as repair, okay, for things. So if when somebody is born, okay, or maybe before they are born, let's talk about the zygote. That zygote eventually becomes millions of cells and eventually forms a person, right? A fetus. So that happens via the process of what? Of mitosis. So it's that it's very, very important. Then the other thing that we discussed was meiosis. Meiosis, on the other hand, it's where it's a reduction type, where you want to form sex cells or gamete cells, such as the sperm and the ovum. So you have to have their what's this their number of chromosomes, because what you don't want is, imagine if a zygote had 46 chromosomes and an ovum had 46, meaning when the fusion would happen, when fertilization would happen, what you would be getting would be what? Would be 92 chromosomes, which would be terrible. So there has to be meiosis, where for the sperm, 46 has to be divided into 23, and then for the ovum, 46 as well to 43. Oh, sorry, to 23. So that when they combine, then they are going to have what? 46, and that's going to be a zygote. So that's something that's important. So today we are focusing in on mitosis. And yeah, so we discussed what prophase is going to be, and I gave the mnemonic on how you can remember that. So but so all somatic cells in a multicellular organism are descendants of the original fertilized egg or the zygote. I've already talked about that. So there are going to be four phases, which will be prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. I gave the mnemonic last time, which is PMAT. So PMAT. So that would be a mnemonic that you would use just to remember them. Okay, so we discussed what happens in prophase. So just to break down, so what you are trying to do in mitosis is you are trying to have a nuclear division. So meaning the nucleus has to divide and then the cell has to divide as well. So what should happen? First of all, in prophase, you're going to have the nuclear membrane disappearing. We know that the nucleus is surrounded by a membrane, which is the nuclear membrane. Now we want these chromosomes to actually be able to what? To separate. So now, if these particular things want to separate, if okay, let me just remove this. So yeah, so if these particular chromatids or chromosomes are to separate, meaning you have to remove that membrane, you have to remove that covering, okay, that is protecting, for lack of a better term, that is protecting this nucleus so that they can be able to separate and go their own ways, or that is separating into two cells later on. And then other thing that happens is, remember, replication has taken place. So what you're going to have is that chromosomes are now going to divide into chromatids. So what you are seeing here, I'm sure you can look at the diagram on your far right. So that diagram on your far right, you see that those chromosomes have been replicated. So what to form chromatids. So what this simply means is that, you see these let's look at that, just one of these of those chromosomes. What you're having is that you see that it's like they are joining together like a peg, isn't it? Like a peg we use for hanging clothes, right? So you see that those two things there, the ones which are joining like a scissors, those are chromatids. We call them sister chromatids because they are the same chromosome that has just replicated. You get it, right? So it's the same chromosome. Then they replicated, then they were held together at a center which we'll call later on as the centromere, but we'll discuss that later on. So that's just what's happening, right? So the chromosome, because replication has happened, now the chromosomes are divided, so each divided into sister chromatids, and they are held together at the center as by the centromere. Then after that happens, you're going then to have the centrioles. So the centrioles, you can see on the far left, it's actually been labeled as centriole. And then, so you see, if even there they've divided. Okay, so coming to prophase, they've divided. Why is this division happen? It's because the centrioles are the ones that are going to be pulling these chromosomes, okay, that are going to be pulling these chromosomes apart. So it has to divide, and you see later on that they will actually go on either ends of the what? On either ends of the cell. So that alone in itself is very, very important. So yeah, so that's really, really about it. So really, those are the key things that are happening in prophase, just preparing the cell for the division. So, having done that, then we now go to metaphase. Remember, the mnemonic was PMAT. So now we go to M. So M is metaphase. So remember those two centrioles that we had talked about. Remember, their M is what is to pull those chromosomes apart, right? And the only way you can do is that when you're on opposite ends of the cell. Let's say, for instance, if you're trying to pull something apart, or you're trying to rip a cloth apart, you're going to be on either side of one another, or of the cloth, isn't it? So that you can be able to pull. Okay, so let me just allow people to join. Okay, so okay, yeah, so that's what is going to happen. Okay, so those centrioles are going to go on opposite ends of the cell. Okay, so they are going to go on opposite ends of the cell so that they can be able to what? To pull. And what are they going to use to pull? They are going to use what they call the spindle fibers. So you don't have to memorize it. Think of this: the centrioles have divided because they have to pull the chromosomes, and now they can't pull the chromosomes when the centrioles are on the same side. So they have to migrate to opposite sides and then produce spindle fibers, which are going to pull on the genetic material that is to be separated. Then the chromosomes are going to align the molecules at the center of the cell. So you see, the chromosomes are aligned, and this is very important because it's called either the equatorial plane or the metaphase plate. How you can remember that? Where is the equator? The equator is at the center of the earth, right? And you can see that those two chromosomes, it's as though they are at the center of the cell. So that's how you can remember the equatorial plane or the metaphase plate. Metaphase plate, it's because this is metaphase happening, and it's just being called a plate because it's a plane. Okay, so that's something important to take note of. And then you see what I was talking about, the centromere there. That's where those sister chromatids are going to be joined. I talked about that some time back. Then the chromosomes are going to be held in place by the spindle fibers. So these spindle fibers are the ones which have been produced by the what? By the centrioles. And they are going to hold, or rather, they are going to hold the chromosomes by the centromere. Why is it important to hold at the centromere? Because the centromere, we can think of it as something strong and as something reliable. Okay, so we can think of the centromere as something strong and as something reliable. So it would be quite tricky for these spindle fibers to attach on the genetic matter. The problem would be that you can't put on genetic matter because you can just cause a mutation, but it's better to put where, most especially at the centromere. Okay, since it's a more stable structure that holds the two things together. So that's metaphase. So metaphase, you are preparing for the pull. Then what's anaphase? Anaphase is just the pulling. Okay, so uh, metaphase, everything has lined up. Then anaphase is just the pulling. So that's where those sister chromatids those sister chromatids now are going to be pulled. So they separate into individual chromosomes, which migrate to opposite sides. Now, because these sister chromatids, like we said, they are coming from replication, so meaning they are the same. Okay, they are identical. So even though they are separating, it's because they underwent replication. So the other way you can think of it is, if this cell if this cell, let's say, had 46 chromosomes, okay, meaning when the replication happened, the chromosomes doubled. So now, because they doubled, that's why here you have to separate them, so that now each cell can have what, 46, 46. Here we are not worrying about fertilization, because these are somatic cells. Somatic cells are not germ cells. Germ cells are or gametics or gametes. Gamete cells are the ones which are involved in what, in fertilization. So it's for them where we get to be concerned about the fact that their chromosomes have to be half of the total. So daughter chromosomes are put to the pose by spindle fibers or fibers. So we've talked about that. So there's just anaphase is simply the pulling. So after the pulling happens, then you're now going to have telophase. So telophase is interesting because telophase, you are going to have what we call cytokinesis. I talked about, it's just the separation of the what, of the cytoplasm. So you see, the chromosomes have already separated because anaphase has already taken place. Now the cell has to divide, because remember, you want to have two daughter cells. So you see, the cells have separated, and you've got one centriole that was on one opposite end, and one centriole that's on the other opposite end, and of course the nuclei containing identical genetic material. Now, one thing that is important to take note of is also in telophase, that's where the spindle fibers would disappear because they've fulfilled their purpose. And then you see there where I will put the mouse. Hope you can the pointer. Hope you can see the pointer here. So there you see that the nucleus now has even a nuclear membrane to protect its integrity. Okay, so those are things which happen in telophase, because now the cell is getting back to its normal. Now, the important things that you have to know is that cytokinesis happens differently in animal and plant cells. So, for animal cells, what you are going to have is, it's going to be like a furrow. And like how you can think of a furrow is, have you ever been at a place where people are trying to make fritters, okay? When they are getting that dough, you see that when you've got a dough and then you try to press in the middle, you can literally cut that dough into two pieces, right? So that's a furrow. It's more or less like an external pressure, right? That forms, and then cytokinesis happens. So you have to know that for an animal cell, it's a furrow that causes the what, cytokinesis. Then for the plant cells, it's a cell plate. Now this makes sense because uh you wouldn't expect for or rather you wouldn't expect, or let me just allow people. So of course you wouldn't expect, or I think someone was just trying to leave, and yeah, so you wouldn't expect a plant cell to have something complex, yeah. So but anyways, so just know the furrow is for the animal cell, then the cell plate is for the plant cell. Another way you can just look at cell plate, it sounds like plant, huh? Plate sounds like plant, so that's how you can remember. But the cell plate is for the plant cells. So that's we are done with mitosis. Are there any questions? So the question that they would love to ask you is to ask you, let's say something like, how many centrioles do you have at anaphase? Those are kind of things that they would ask you. But so that's something that you may be asked on. But of course, one centriole divided, so you've got two, uh, one on either end, and they are pulling. So I introduced what meiosis is. I talked about the importance of the fact that meiosis has to be there, so that for the production of gametes, a process called gametogenesis. So how you do with these terms is, genesis always means forming, okay, production, something new, beginning, things like that, right? Then gameto is telling you about the gametes. So you can think of it that's a production of what? Of gametes. And then you've got fertilization. So I explained to say if meiosis were not occurring, what we would have been having is because let's say for instance, as human beings, we've got 46 chromosomes, isn't it? Now, if there was no meiosis, what that would have meant is that the ovum, which is the female gamete, would have been having 46 chromosomes, and the spermatozoa or the sperms would have been having what, 46 as well. Now, what would have meant that during fertilization, meaning that humans would have been having what, 92, and that 92 meaning that the other generation will have double that. So, in short, species wouldn't survive. Okay, so that's where meiosis comes in handy, because it has to have the what's this, the number of chromosomes in the gamete in order to maintain the chromosome number of the species in the offspring. So one thing to take note of is meiosis is going to have a single DNA replication. So even though meiosis is going to have two stages, but replication only happens once. How to think of it is this: a cell was alone. Let's say it had 46 chromosomes, right? It had 46 chromosomes. Replication happens. It now has what, 92 chromosomes. Then the two divisions which are going to happen. The first division is going to separate the two cells to have what? To have 46, 46. And another division is going to separate each of those two cells to have 23, 23, 23, 23. So that's why meiosis gives you four cells which are going to have a haploid number of chromosomes. So what's a haploid number? Haploid number is half of the what? Half of the diploid. So what's a diploid? So if we said let's say for us human beings, the number of chromosomes in a cell, it's 46. So that's so for a cell which has got 46 chromosomes is a diploid. Then when you get half of that cell, okay, when you get half the number of those chromosomes, that cell then becomes a what? Becomes a haploid. Becomes a what? Becomes a haploid. So that's something that's very, very important to take note of. So now we've talked about having two meiotic divisions. So the first one is going to be a reductional division. So what's going to happen there is that this is where now you are reducing the what's this, the cells. Okay, so this is where the reduction happens, because the replication happened. Okay, so after the replication happens, and then what you are then going to have is you are now separate, you've now divided. So now you've got now 46, 46, which, because that cell, we are saying that that cell beginning from where it was, replication has happened, meaning that it had double the normal. So when this first step happens, you've done a reduction, you've reduced that, isn't it? And why it's being called a reduction, it's because the two daughter cells which you formed in the first division, they don't have the same what, chromosomes as the what, as the one that you started with. Okay, then the second one, meiosis 2, or the second meiotic division, is an equational division. What this means is that it's like mitosis, in that in this one you are not reducing per se, but what you're going to have is or rather you can think of it like reduction, but the key concept here is that in this one you are separating the sister chromatids. For the first one, you are separating the chromosomes together, bound as sister chromatids. They've not yet separated. But when it comes to the second meiotic division, you are actually separating now those sister chromatids, which is pretty much like mitosis. Don't worry, we'll look at diagrams, but I just want you to have an understanding. So that even as we'll be looking at sketches, you'll be getting the concept. Oh, sorry, pardon me. So okay, I think I moved that a little bit too much. Yeah, so there it is. So we've got those, each of the two meiotic divisions has got prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So the exchange of genes which takes place in meiosis creates variation. So that's the importance of meiosis. Meiosis allows for variation in the population. And we know one thing that we know, I'm sure you've heard of survival of the fittest. What survival of the fittest basically means is that the genetic pool of human beings, or rather of any organisms, will always try to ensure that they are becoming better and better to survive the what, to survive the environment. That's why this delta variant of covid-19, it's more deadly because variation has taken place, so it knows how to survive better in the bodies of what, in the bodies of people, hence the high death rates that are coming out from the what, from the coronavirus, right? Or the delta variant. So that's the key thing. So that's how nature is. Nature will always ensure that it produces something to improve the survival, the survival of the population. So that's important to take note of. So now we're talking about meiosis one. So of course we know that before meiosis happens, you are having replication, which happens. We've already talked about that. So that's the interphase. During the interphase, you've got, remember, the interphase is not part of division. That it happens before division. So now what then you're going to have now, prophase what? Prophase one. Now this is very interesting, and I want you to pick out the differences between mitosis and meiosis, because this is where the money really is when it comes to questioning. So during prophase, what you're having is that the homologous chromosomes are going to lie side by side. So look at what's happening here. So the replication that happened was the replication that happened for the what? That happened for these particular chromosomes. And now these homologous chromosomes. So by homologous chromosomes, these are so you may want to think of them as these chromosomes which are pretty much the same. That's how you could look at it. So now what's happening is that these are going to what? These are going. Okay. So that's the, so homologous chromosomes, you could say these are chromosomes which have corresponding DNA sequences and come from separate parents. So you can think of it like that. However, the key thing that I want you to think about at this particular point is this. So look at what's happening in interphase. The homologous chromosomes are lying side by side, okay? And what you are getting is the process what? Synapses, because you see that those chromosomes, these ones here, there are two of them. They are homologous, they've paired. Okay, so they are homologous because they are going through a pairing process called synapsis. And what's happening is that each pair of changed protein of changed chromosomes is called a bivalent, consisting of two identical chromatids. So what you are having here is, look at what they are saying. Each pair of chromosomes is called a bivalent, consisting of what? Of two identical chromatids. So what's a bivalent? A bivalent is a pair of what? Of chromosomes which is consisting of two identical chromatids. So you could see there, uh okay, let's calm it down here. Yeah, so you see there you've got the bivalent, each pair. So a bivalent is consisting of what? Of two identical chromatids. So that's an important point to take note of. Now we've talked about synapsis, which is the pairing of what? Pairing of homologous chromosomes. What is the importance of homologous chromosomes? These are important because, like we said, they are corresponding DNA sequences. So meaning they can be able to interact, okay? And when they interact, this interaction, that's where some chromatids are going to break. So some chromatid parts are going to break up and then reunite. So think, go now. Let's look at this, the far right picture. So you see that homologous pair, you see that the synapsis has happened because those homologous chromosomes are pairing up, and then you see that the chromatids, those non-sister chromatids. Now why are they being called non-sister chromatids? It's because, remember, it's only those chromatids which are held by the same centromere that are going to be what? that are going to be sister chromatids. Those which are not held by the same centromere are called non-sister chromatids. So what you are having here is during this synapses now, you've got non-sister chromatids, and they like bringing diagrams and then ask you to say which one here is synapses. So the synapses involves non-sister chromatids. They don't have to be bound by the same centromere. Okay, so these are non-sister chromatids, and then that point of exchange where a chromatid breaks and then reunites with a non-sister chromatid, it's what you call the chiasma. That's if it's singular. And if there are many, like you see here, there are two, it's happening on this homologous pair here and on this other pair. So we call them what? Chiasmata. And this process is what we call crossing over. And crossing over is very, very important because that's where you find that uh, children don't always look the same. You can come from the same parent, but you won't be the same with your with your siblings unless you are twins. Huh? But under normal circumstances, same parent, someone will be dark. Same parent, someone will be tall, the other one will be short. So things like that. All that happens where at crossing over, and that's the importance of meiosis because it adds variety. You can imagine we looked at if everyone was identical to their siblings. Quite interesting. Huh? So yeah, so that's the thing about meiosis. It adds variety. So then now when we go to metaphase, now what you are having here is that the chromatids or bivalents orient themselves on the equational plane or the metaphase plane. So it's the same as what happens in mitosis, but here what are lining up is what are homologous chromosomes. So you see, for that one, they were just lining up as one chromosome or two sister chromatids, and then they were being separated. But for this one, you see that what are lining up is what? It's homologous what? Homologous chromosomes. So you see this one here, it's homologous to this one. That other one here on the right is homologous to that one on top. So that is the arrangement. So the arrangement is different than that which we had in one that we had in mitosis. So, but however, they are still aligning on the equational plane of the metaphase plate. Now, one thing that is interesting about the centromeres, so I said the centromeres are those dark things that are uniting the sister chromatids. So now what these do is that they provide some repulsion between these homologous chromosomes, and that is important because you don't want the worst this. You don't want these homologous chromosomes to be combining anyhow and anyhow. But one thing that is interesting so is the centromere is going to provide some repulsion, right? And what you're going to have is, even though the middle parts are repelling due to the centromere, but you see that the end parts are remaining attached at the chiasma. So meaning that interaction, that crossing over which has happened, is still being maintained even though the centromere is providing some level of what? Some level of repulsion, but it's still what it's being maintained by the chiasmata. So the centromere are causing a repulsion on the homologous chromosomes, but these chromosomes remain attached at the chiasmata. So that's about it. So pretty much similar, anyway. But then now what we are getting about, so pretty much similar to mitosis. That's what I meant. So anaphase, what you're getting in anaphase is those homologous chromosomes are now moving to the opposite poles of the cell. So it's the same thing. You are just pulling them. Now, what is important in this is that you are not pulling a sister chromatid. You are pulling chromosomes apart. So you see that. Let's look at the far left. So the far left has got what? Look at this diagram. The far left. You see that it's got that one on top and that one down. Those are homologous chromosomes, and they're going to be pulled apart. And then when you look at the far right again, you see again there's that one on top, that one down. The homologous chromosomes are going to be pulled apart. So that's what happens. Remember that for the mitosis, we are having what? The sister chromatids pulled apart. But here, we are still dealing with the what? We are still dealing with the homologous chromosomes, which makes sense because then what you are then doing is that then you are thinking then there has to be a second division where we can separate what? These sister chromatids. And that's where meiosis 2 comes in. So now these homologous chromosomes have moved to the opposite poles of the cell, carrying exchange parts. So you see, remember those interactions that happened at the chiasmata. They've now concluded, and so that part which was on this non-sister chromatid has gone to the other part. Okay, so because of that, there is now variation. You can be born from the same parents, but you won't look the same unless you are twins. So when this happens now, meaning that a haploid number of chromosomes moves to each pole, meaning the number of chromosomes has been halved, okay? Because you are separating the homologous chromosomes. So they'll ask you in meiosis, at which point is a haploid number of chromosomes formed? So it's anaphase. Okay, so now we go to telophase. So for telophase is pretty much the same. The new these things will separate, can either be a furrow or a cell plate, depending on whether it's an animal cell or a plant cell. Then the nuclear membrane appears, and then you're going to have two daughter cells with haploid number of what? Of chromosomes there. Then we now go to prophase 2. So here we've done what we wanted, but then those sister chromatids have to be separated. Okay, so now that's now what remains to be our target. So because that's our target, let's dive right into it. Great. So now what you're having there is quite interesting because for prophase 2 now, the chromosomes reappear. So why are they saying the chromosomes reappear? Because there's what we call condensation. So condensation is normally in the, let's go to mitosis so that you can understand the concept. So I want you to see something about what happens with the chromosome. So when the cell is not dividing, you see there on top, you've seen how the chromosomes are. You can't really tell them apart because you see like how they are. Okay, they are like you could say they've not yet they are not in a way that can facilitate what, that can facilitate a division. So that when they say the chromosomes reappear, it's not like they disappeared. It's just like, it's just that they are now in a form where they are well organized, and they are well straightened, and they can be able to move about. Okay, so that's what it basically means, not that they disappeared at any point. So chromosomes reappear. In short, they are in a form now which can be, because remember, after the telophase one, the cell maybe may tend to relax a bit. I'm not saying they relax, but you can see there on top, those two, it seems like their chromosomes are back to normal. So they have to reappear in that form. And the nuclear membrane disappears. We've already explained why. Then the chromatids carry exchange parts. So this is just a reminder to say crossing over happened, okay, at the chiasma. So what this means is these chromatids now have a certain level of variation with them. Then metaphase again, the same thing. The chromatids are going to align on the metaphase plate. So it's basically mitosis just repeating itself. Then for anaphase 2 now, you see it's going to be the same. So now what is interesting in anaphase 2 is the chromatids separate into individual chromosomes and to opposite poles of each cell. Now why you see that what's separating there, it's now what? It's the sister chromatids. For that other one, it was what? Homologous chromosomes for anaphase 1. But for anaphase 2, you see that it's the sister chromatids, which are what? Which are doing the separation on either end of the cell. So when once that has happened, you see that now, of course, remember that you had started with one cell, then you produced two cells. Then from these two cells, you're going to produce two from each. So when that happens, the nuclear membrane reappears around its set of chromosomes. Then you end up with what? Four daughter cells. Okay, each carrying a haploid number of chromosomes with exchanged parts. So what this tells you is that you may find that all these four cells are going to be different. Okay, they are going to be different because crossing over may have happened at different points. So that's the beauty about meiosis. It increases variety. So the comparisons, these are very important. But so mitosis is an equation of division. So it separates sister chromatids. Then meiosis, the first one is a reductional. The second one is equational. Because like you saw, the second one was basically mitosis, right? Because we had sister chromatids being separated, but it's the first one which was the reductional one. Then mitosis has one division per cell. Oh, sorry, has one division per cycle. Okay, so it has one cytokinesis, whereas meiosis, like we saw, has two divisions per cell. So that entails that each cell is going to be divided twice, and when you divide the cell once, it becomes two. When you divide those twice, you get four. So you've got two cytokinesis. That's why you're having four cells. Okay. The other way you can think of it is when you cut a cake in two. So when you got a piece of cake, you cut it half. You've got two parts. When you cut it again horizontally, you find that you've got four pieces of cake. So you can think of it like that. So you've got four cells now. Okay, then the other thing is homologous chromosomes do not align, so there is no synapsis in mitosis, where like we saw for meiosis, homologous chromosomes align themselves and form chiasmata, where genetic exchange takes place, thereby increasing uh variety, okay, or variation in the offspring. Then two daughter cells are produced from one mother cell, four daughter cells are produced from one mother cell. Then chromosome number of daughter cells is the same as that of the mother cell. Chromosome number of daughter cells is half that of the mother cell. For meiosis, like that makes sense because remember, the main purpose why we use this in gametogenesis is you don't want the sperm and the ovum to have 46 chromosomes. Okay, so you want to have that number. So then you go now to the sixth point. It takes place in all somatic. So somatic cells are basically all cells that are body cells, of course, except the germ cells. Germ cells being the gonads. So the female gonads would be the ovaries in this case. The male gonads would be the testes in this case. Those are important things to take note of. So the functions of mitosis, you've got growth, we talked about it. Everyone came from a single zygote, and here we are. Repair, when you injure yourself, cells are going to be formed to repair that. Asexual reproduction doesn't require any reduction in chromosome number because it's only one thing involved in it. But for sexual reproduction, because two things are coming together, you need to have their chromosome number so that they don't have a problem when they come together. So before we can start genetics and talk about all those crossings and Mendelian, has everyone understood mitosis and meiosis? Okay, no one is responding, so we can proceed. So, when we talk about genetics, what we are looking at is it's a scientific study of heredity and variation in living organisms. So, what we are basically looking at, okay, let's first define heredity. So, heredity is just the process of transmission of characters from one generation to another generation, bringing about similarity between parents and their offspring. Okay, then variation is the difference between individuals of the same family or same species. So, what we are basically trying to study in genetics is, why is it that parents, oh sorry, why is that children of the same parents look alike? That's what we are trying to answer. Why is it that you look alike with your siblings? Why is it that you don't look very much alike with your cousin? And then the other question then is, but again, why is it that you and your siblings are not identical? So that's what genetics is looking at. So for heredity is that, why are you almost the same height as your mother? Or why do you have the same eyes as your mother? Why do you have the same texture of hair as your mother? So that's what we are answering, right? So heredity is just the process of transmission of characters. I'm sure we've heard, no, that child has got ears like the mother, has got a nose like the father. That's heredity. Process of transmission of characters from one generation parents to another generation of offspring, which brings about similarity between parents and their offspring. Then variation again, you're not identical to your siblings unless you are twins, but under normal circumstances, you are not identical with your siblings. So of course, being twins, it's normal as well, but it's not as common as being different. So yeah, so variation, it's just a difference between individuals. Why is that you can be in the same family, but you are different from your cousins? You look different from your cousins, you look different from your siblings. And people, we are of the same species, but why is that people look different? Why is that even dogs look different, but they're of the same species? So that's basically what we are looking at. And all this came from the person that is called the father of genetics. His name was Gregor Mendel. So what Mendel had realized is that he noticed that there were certain plants which were tall, and he realized that usually their offsprings would. Oh no, whatever. Yeah, so he realized that their offsprings would usually have a certain. So he realized that their offsprings would have a certain character that would be similar to the earlier generation. Okay, so he thought, wait, this is quite interesting. Why is it that every character of the garden peas seems to have an alternative form? So it can either be short or it can either be tall. It can either have, you know, maybe it would have yellow flowers or petals, and it would have maybe red petals. Why? So he realized that they had alternative forms. And so, like for instance, when he looked at the peas and saw the ones which were tall and others which were short, he thought, so these are alternative forms for the character of the length of the stem, because it's pretty much the stem that determines how tall something is. So then what he did was, he got those tall plants and the short plants, and then what's it he facilitated their reproduction. So meaning the short plants and the tall plants, he made them to what, to have pollination, or for them to have a sexual, for them to fertilize, yeah, let me put it that way. So for them to have a sexual reproduction, that's if it can be said, yeah, sexual reproduction. Then what then happened is, what then he realized is that he had a hybrid, but this hybrid was very interesting because then he realized that all the what's this, because he then realized that in this hybrid, it was very very interesting because all the what's this, because all the plants that he got were tall, and he didn't see any short plants. So then what then he did was, from that generation of the hybrid, so they're being called the hybrids because they contain the short and the tall and the short. So then when he got those hybrids and pollinated those hybrids, he then observed that, wait a minute, these ones were hybrid tall, but how comes that now they produced a mixture of tall and short plants? Then it was like, okay, there has to be some genetic transfer that happens in these. So he used seven characters of the P and got similar results. So whether he looked at the length of the stem, which could either be tall or short, the shape of the seed, which could either be round or wrinkled, the color of the cotyledons, which can either be yellow or green, the color of seed coat, which can either be gray or white, the shape of pods can be inflated or constricted, yeah, inflated or constricted. So meaning that the shape of a pod can either be something that's inflated, okay, or it can be constricted. Then the color of pods could either be green or yellow, and then also the position of the flower. Some had the flower being somewhere in the stems, others the flower would be on top, okay, so that axial and terminal. So he worked with these plants, and then he came up with the principles or the laws of inheritance. And these were the law of segregation and the law of independent assortment. So we go now to the Mendel's first law, which is the law of segregation. So what happened for the law of segregation was that it states that contrasting forms of a character are controlled by a pair of unlike alleles which separate in equal numbers during gamete formation. Don't worry, I'm going to explain this. So what this basically means is that, let's say we are coding for a character of, let's talk about being tall. Okay, so what Mendel was basically saying is, what happens in this instance is that you are going to have two alleles. Okay, so you are going to have, and we know that the alleles are just different forms of the same gene. Okay, so let's say this is a gene that is coding for the length of the stem. So they are going to be contrasting forms of a character, okay, which are controlled by a pair of unlike alleles which separate in equal numbers during gamete formation. So remember, in gamete formation, if let's say the parents, let's say the mother is tall and she's homozygous tall, meaning she's got a capital T. Okay, so she's got two capital T's. Okay, what's going to happen is that during gamete formation, those are going to separate. Those, you remember we talked about meiosis, so those will separate. So meaning that, but however, all her ovums are going to have the capital T for length. But if the father, on the other hand, has got a capital T, which is for being tall, and has got a small t for being short. It means that what's going to happen is that during gamete formation, other gametes are going to have the capital T, others are going to have the lowercase t. What that means is that depending on which gametes are going to interact, the offspring can either be homozygous tau, which meaning can either have a capital T from the father and a capital T from the mother and the father, thereby making them to be tau. So the child is going to be tau, is going to be homozygous tau, and I'll talk about that because they are the same alleles. Or if it's the capital T from the mother and the lowercase t from the father, then the child is going to be still tau, but it's going to be heterozygous tau, because, or you could put like, is a hybrid when it comes to being tall. So that's pretty much about it. But don't worry, I've just put it in words like this so that when we begin to talk about what's this, about these other things, like it's going to really make sense. So let me just save this class that we've had so that